Hey guys, Lancy here. Hope everyone's doing well. Thanks again for the weekly update on the MTG market. Let's get to it. So the first thing is I'm going to go and cover the dual lands because it looks like the market's topped off, or at least in the last week or 2 weeks, the market's kind of gone on a downturn for at least some of these bad lands, or sorry, some of these dual lands. And I feel like that makes a lot of sense. As far as I can tell, there are no things coming from the US side, at least, for more stimulus checks. If there were, then I would be not surprised to see another leg up. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to crash or come down by even anything significant. It just looks like it's flatlined. There aren't many people selling. I know that it's very hard for people to sell when they've acquired these collections. So a lot of people are just holding on to the recent profits that they've got, and I think that makes a lot of sense. If you're going to jump into the market at this point, now is probably a good time to start looking at any bargains, any movement to the lower side for some of these higher level medium quality cards to the near mints, and see if they've started stabilizing. So let's have a look at the market for TCG. I will also admit the fact that TCG isn't shipping to Australia has kind of dampened my whole, jump into the market because it just can't. Look at this, a lightly played for 363. Now, that still feels like slightly on the higher end, but certainly for lightly played, you would have trouble finding them at this price point of 363. Most of the time, they'd be higher than the moderately played. You can see lightly played going for a while. And then the near mints, no longer do you see them at 1,000 or however crazy. You still see some stupid numbers kind of messing up the market pricing, but on average, it doesn't look as bad. Now, you guys can let me know in the comments what you think about this. Would you get a lightly played Badlands revised version for $363? When you know that, a couple of months ago, they were sitting around about 330 to maybe even less than that. Probably 240 was a while back now, but, certainly that was a big spike up. They're not sitting at the 480s that MTG stock seems to be pointing at, but you never know, especially when it comes to shipping. Let me know what you guys think at the bottom for these dual lands. Now, Plateau. Oh boy, I have not seen anything like this one for a while. Now, Plateau had like 3 jumps up over the last 2 years, but TCG Player still says that you can get one. So Plateau seems to be $352. TCG Player for heavily played, $264. Heavily played, not that worth it. Lightly played for $289. Not that bad. In my mind, anyway. Sorry, I'm not gonna. I mean, don't get me wrong. That's an extra 30, almost 28% add-on for if I wanted to get that for Australian dollars. But it doesn't feel as painful as it was in the middle of the, I guess, the dual lands rush. Savannah, same thing, flatlining right now. TCG Player probably has it up for 229 heavily played. I usually look for moderately. 349. That's actually still on the higher end. Volcanic Island flattened out as well. And last, Underground Sea flattened out, but still seems to be creeping up slightly. And we'll have to see how that comes out of it. Moderately played for $712. Kind of expensive, but you never know what the end price point of these are going to be in, let's say, 5-10 years. It's a tricky time to buy, but because I'll show you in the graph for the US dollar, which I normally go as what is going to happen to the currency. No doubt that there's always going to be some inflation, but the price rises might have been a bit too preemptive, and we'll have to see if the pullback is going to help balance things out. Frenetic Ifrit from Mirage. This was one of those pump and dumps for the reserve list, actually. So this is a reserve list card. It had a bit of a pump back in 2018. Then, obviously, 2021, it jumped up twice. And then June, something happened again in May to June, and then it jumped up again. And ever since then, it has been dropping down. Now, it hit a price point of about $10, which was the early April level. And it looks like because of that, people are starting to think that that's the floor and starting to buy back in. Now, that could be true. It looks like this was a pretty aggressive buyout. But we'll have to see exactly what happens. You can see that there was a bit of a buyout at this point. And certainly looks like they have hit a limit where they're like, okay, if it hits $10, then I'm buying a lot of them. So maybe someone did it. Repentant Blacksmith from Arabian Nights. Arabian Nights card, not on the reserve list, but old enough. Kind of cool water art. Looks kind of cool. But you can see that this card was $35 for the longest time. Now it's sitting at $70. Truthfully, this doesn't feel like it's going to drop by too much. It looks like it's also very spiky. Not many of them out there. Moving on. Thrall Champion from Fallen Empires. Reserve list. Yes, it is a pretty cool. All Thralls get +1/+1, and also it has a pretty cool effect. But specific to Thralls, $1.20 before, $7 at after, dropped down to $4, and now jumping back up to $6. So once again, people seem to think that it's flatlined for long enough, time to buy back in. Not a bad idea. Once it's flatlined for, let's say, a couple of months, it might actually be okay to buy in, because flatlining usually means that that's the baseline. Maybe people are playing it pretty smart. Millicent, Restless Revenant. That's a lot of words, but once again, it's from Crimson Vow from Innistrad, so that's a bit too new. Gravecrawler from Secret Lairs, it's a really good card, cool art. It's also a bit new, so obviously the price point is going to be based on what you actually feel the value for. Maestro Angel from Conflux. This card was pretty expensive actually for what it does. Had a massive drop off, now sitting at $2. Yeah, this is a good time to pick it up if it actually was sitting at $17 for the longest time. It was reprinted in Jumpstart and as a mythic, and was in the mystery booster cards. So altogether, I think this is actually, if you wanted one of these, $2 for this card when it used to be $18, maybe not a bad idea. Whenever it deals damage to a player, you may play non-land card from your hand without paying its mana cost. It is unfortunate that it is not a I forgot what it's called. Anyway, that's fine. It's a legendary. Sorry, it's not a legendary, so you can't play it as a commander. But you know, maybe you can work around any rules that your friends have. Truthfully, it just feels like a less broken version of Kalia, but more flexible. So cool. Old Man of the Sea from Arabian Nights on the reserve list was an expensive card before, but had a huge spike up. So it's just $169. Had a huge spike up in, what was it, May to June. Went up to $600. Complete buyout. Now the person's trying to sell it back slowly, I assume. Yeah, it's crazy. We'll have to see how that goes. North Star from Legends. So on the reserve list from Legends as well. Very jumpy for this card. Hard to get a price point. So we'll have to see how that goes in the future. Serenity from Classic 6th Edition. Cool card. Not much of a spike, but obviously got picked up by the algorithms for MTG stocks. Yeah, I think it's just a cool card. At the beginning of your upkeep, destroy all artifacts and enchantments. They can't be regenerated. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with this card. If there's only 2 versions of it. The other one is from Weatherlight. If you like this kind of card, then go for it. Arcade Sabbath from Legends, another one of those legendary dragons. So now this one is on the I thought it was not on the reserve list. There's a 78-cent card for this, but it is from Legends. It is one of the legendary dragons. Its price point grew from 2021, and it seems to be stabilizing around about the $90 mark. Of course, if you really want this card with a really watered up, because this looks duller, but at the same time it doesn't look as old, then you can always get the Chronicles version for 78 cents. See how that plays for you, and then see if you want to get the fancy one. Livonia Ceylon from Legends from the reserve list as well. First strike, legendary landwalk. Probably not that bad because a lot of people have legendary landwalks. Cool art, but like sitting at $117. It started off at $14 in 2020. Now it's sitting at $117. That's almost like a 5 times. Sorry, no, that's not a 14 times. $12. That's almost like a 10-time gain for this card. So whether or not you feel like it's valuable at this point, it really does depend. There are other cards on the reserve list, but being a reserve list card itself, cool art from Legends, maybe people think that 117 is a good price point to enter. Dimir Signet dropping off again. I feel like all of these secret layer ones are really hard to keep tabs on. And Zulaport Cutthroat, pretty cool card, obviously gaining, very popular in Commander. Moving over to MTG's Goldfish. So let's just have a look at the weekly gains. starting with Modern, the fancy one. So we got Doubling Season. Actually, I noticed Snapcaster Mage on here. It might be because he was dropping because people assumed that he was going to be in the Innistrad Crimson Vow, but I guess he isn't because he's starting to gain. Doubling Season gaining by 4%. Goblin King gaining by 27%. Graven Cans moving up by 15%. Olivia Voldolin moving up by 11% and that's it at $16.50. Fist of the Suns moving up by 13%. Another Goblin King moving up by 21%. But pretty cool. I think Thran and Kakusho, good cards. Makes sense that they're moving up. I think they are going to probably have some introduction, especially Kakusho. Might get a reprinting in the next Kamigawa set. I think it's from Kamigawa. Return from Kamigawa, so on and so forth. Biggest drops, Mr. Gate dropping down by 17%, but literally nothing else has dropped down by more than 10%. Credit for Behemoth is on here, but that's because it got reprinted with 2 reprintings that are both legal from the new Secret Layers. But other than that, nothing too crazy. Moving over to Legacy, just because I want to see if any big drops are here. It's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen. You got Solonkar, the Swamp King, moving up by 106%, which is crazy since there is a 20th century printing of that card. Other than that, nothing too much. I mean, these numbers are all pretty decent for the drops and gains, but you can't really predict it based on that. Pioneer, Twilight Prophet moving up by another 4%. Of course, $34.24. Great card if you got a Commander deck. If you got a... Actually, it's good card in Commander. If you got a Vampire deck, it's amazing. Gisela, the Broken Blade, moving up by 5% and I sit at $24. Final Devastation, I really wanted to get that card. I should have got it like 2 years ago when it was like $20. Draneth Magistrate moving up by 15%. Legion Loyalist moving up by 13% and I sit at $8. That's crazy. Nicol God, Dragon God now gaining as well by 7% and I sit at $9.66. Teferi Time Raveler dropping down by 16% and I sit at $20. Kaya Uzov Usurper dropping down by 18% and I sit at $4.66. Actually, for a 3 mana Planeswalker, which comes with 3 loyalty, I expected this card to do a lot better, and I think a lot of other people did as well. Kozileth's Return dropping down by 11% and I sit at $6.22. So, last but not... Actually, that is the last. I was going to say not least, but we ended it up with the stocks and dollar chart at the very end. What I wanted to show was that the dollar for the last couple of weeks has been gaining quite steadily. Actually, not even steadily. At the end, it was just running straight up. Now, it looks like there is some overbuying happening here. So there is no chance. I mean, there is a higher chance that it's going to come back, retest maybe 95, retest maybe even 94, and then continue moving up if everything is not changing in the market as it is. But if it drops, breaks this channel, breaks the 200-day moving average, then I would probably say that the dollar is getting damaged, probably beyond repair. If it breaks the 200, and I mean, if it comes back to 89, something has gone wrong. Right now it's sitting at 96. Dropping down to 89, that'll be a huge move in the FX market. An unexpected move right now because everyone's expecting the dollar to gain. So if the dollar gains, there's a higher chance that crypto, stocks will start getting a pullback, especially right now. It looks like there's a fight in the market where people are just going, I don't care if the dollar's going up, because that's wrong. So people are buying everything else. And there's people, obviously the FX traders, which are like, there's a lot of people in the world that now owe dollars as their debt. I mean, not just in the US, but like literally everywhere in the world, especially for oil. So if the dollar goes up, then everything else has to go down. So what they're doing is they're just hedging their bets and buying the dollar in the hopes that when things fall over, the dollar will just continue moving up. So it's really hard to predict because even gold was following the dollar. Like, check this chart out. Gold and the dollar, very rarely do they move up at the same time. I think there's actually a way for me to add the DXY to the gold chart. So if I do that, I'll just do that quickly. Probably doesn't help as much because one of them is completely... Yeah, okay, well, that didn't really go the way I wanted to. I was kind of hoping that'll be easier to read. But you can see very slightly the correlation that when the dollar moves up, gold moves down. When the dollar moves up, gold moves down. When this is the only time where when the gold is moving up, you got the dollar dipping, but then you also have it moving up at the end. And it's really weird because normally this is very rare for it to happen, and usually only happens when people don't expect it. So we're going to have to see how that goes. And I need to get rid of the dollar. So overall, I think for crypto, once again, it is pulling back. It's actually not that bad of a pullback, but you got to remember that once it's broken this 50 on the RSI, it has to recapture the 50, and then you're showing strength. If it bounces around this area, that's showing weakness. So you can see here, until it broke this, it's hard to actually get in. And then ever since it was on the downtrend, it obviously has been pretty flatlined. But once it breaks it to the downside, it's also hard to get in because it's just going to continue going down. This is a rebound buy, I think. It's below the 50 moving average, which means it's probably going to retest 60,000. Once it retests it, then we're going to have to judge if it recaptures 60,000 and then continues moving up. Right now, at 59,000, it's probably not a bad place to add some positions, assuming that you just don't trust the markets in general. You don't trust central banks. You don't trust what the currencies are doing. You can always enter, but over the long term, I think it's always best to be careful of these because it still feels that there's more on the downside. But you never know when the market's going to change. The probability right now is to the downside, but I'd probably say it's like a 60-40. So, it was much better when it was hitting 55,000. That's crazy. If you got in then, good for you. It's hard to do that in the Australian markets because that's when everyone's sleeping. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching and have a good one. See ya.